Hello and welcome back to the Popcorn for Dinner podcast, the podcast by and for screw ups and dipshits. Today,
Yeah.
we are talking about Succession Season 4, Episode 4, fondly referred to as Succession PC, post Cox. And joining me once again, he's always in the mood for a phone sex bit. It's Ebube. How are you doing?
Debatable, but I won't. I don't think I'll disagree with that at this exact moment.
Well, a
I'm
bit. It
doing
doesn't have
okay.
to be not actual phone sex. Just
Yeah, I know,
just
I
the
know,
joke.
I know. It's
Yeah,
I know
yeah,
the bits is like because phone sex bits are so like hit or miss. If you're not Roman Roy, then I don't know if you can
yeah.
do it
If you're
right.
true,
So
true. If you're not remember right, you can't take the risk. Um, how have you been? I haven't listened yet, but I hear you had a tough Mando recording, a tough Mando episode.
look, man, there's too much happening. People are getting ambushed. People are suffering. Okay, they are. I'm
I'm
just gonna
sorry,
say,
I
let my
didn't mean
people
to
go.
unleash the PTSD. You
Is
seem like
all I'll say is let my people go. Okay,
fair
based on
enough.
all the references I've been making in this season so far, I think anybody who watches the show would be fine in understanding me saying let my people go.
Fair enough. I don't watch the show, so I'm just gonna take your word for it. So speaking of Mandalorian, as I hope you guys know, if you're on this podcast feed, Ebube and Priscilla have been covering it, and we're entering the finale this week. So please check out those episodes on the feed. Ted Lasso and Yellow Jackets continue to chug along. Um, and if you're listening to this episode, this podcast Succession episode, please, well, I was going to beg, but I'll get to that in a second because I just remembered importantly, unless you listen to this episode in the 1 hour between the end of this week's Succession and the end of the Barry season 4 premiere, then Barry thoughts are also up on the feed right now. Um, please check that out as well. We're going to be covering Barry all through the season. Episodes are going to be out immediately after the Barry episodes finish airing on HBO. This week is a 2 episode premiere, and then from then to be 1 week, one per week, leading up to the dreaded week where Succession, Barry, Ted Lasso, and Mrs. Maisel literally all finished their final episodes in the same week. Plus the Yellow,
It's a TV bonanza,
yeah,
man.
plus the Yellow Jacket
TV
season
bonanza.
finale, which at least that season, not series. But four of the my best shows of the last 10 years all finished within like the same time span. That's quite stressful. Um, so back to the begging bit.
Yeah.
Please, if you listen to this episode, please rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Just to say that we see the numbers. We know people that listen to this episode, and thankfully there are more than five at least for Succession. But we also see the number of people that are rating. The numbers don't correlate to people that are rating. So please, if you're listening to this and you haven't rated us on Spotify, please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Please give us 5 stars. You can even just give a review. The review can just be like, this podcast is great. I know you might not believe it, but those things really, like one review really helps us just get across in the algorithm. So unless if you don't like this episode, if you don't like this podcast, please don't review at all. Just thank you for not even reviewing. But if you do like us, please give us 5 stars. Um, quickly before we go on,
Wow, you weren't kidding. That was a full-on begging
oh yeah,
bit.
look,
Love it.
you have to be shameless sometimes. You just have to beg. Like guys, it's taking. You guys see how many episodes are coming out on the feed between now and like June. Like there's a lot of shows going. It takes a lot of energy. So the least I can do is just beg you guys to please rate and review. Please share with friends, so that it
Hmm.
makes it a bit worthwhile for us to continue doing it. Finally, we're getting closer to the release of our film focused podcast titled Is This Cinema, hosted by Priscilla and Jess, produced by Chinedu. So please keep an ear out for that. We should be giving out some information about that very soon, and hopefully it will be on all podcast platforms. Yeah, we're going to talk about Succession. OBR, if you're listening to this, stop listening to it and go prepare for your exams. And yeah, good luck with that. So what we're going to do for
Yep.
Succession is we're going to go beat by beat. We're going to talk about some important things that happened, and then some also not important but very funny things. Because even by Succession standards, this is a bottle episode. Like they've had some episodes that are in one location. Safe Room comes to mind, but this is a real bottle episode, even by the show's standards. So yeah, Succession season 4, episode 4, titled Honeymoon States, written by Jesse Armstrong and Lucy Preble. In which that jumped out to me because I think this is the first time Jesse Armstrong is sharing writing credit on an episode. I can't remember him.
Perhaps, yeah. I thought about it as
Yeah,
well because Lucy, I think, also tends to write on her
yeah.
own. Actually one of my favorite Succession
Oh,
writers.
okay.
Her background as a playwright really contributes to all the amazing dialogue
Yeah.
and how it goes so well with the blocking. Like she's covered a lot of corporate stuff. She's responsible for some of those crazy Roman lines as well. You gotta love her.
Yeah.
So yeah, seeing them work together on this episode, looking at those writing credits at the beginning, it just makes sense because there's so many jokes in this episode. To be honest with you, that's one thing I noticed. I was just watching it and thinking the banter in this episode is is in excess
Do you have
in a good
do you
way.
have an episode that jumps to mind that Lucy wrote?
Uh, I'm not sure. I'm thinking of maybe season 3, episode 4. I'm not entirely sure if she actually wrote that one. I know that she had a conversation with Kara Swisher about that specific episode, but I'll have to check.
Anyway, yeah. So, and it's directed by the great Lawrence Kafaria, who directed the movie Hustlers and also last season's Too Much Birthday. So she's very good at having Kendall in crisis. We can we can decipher that. Um, Speaking of Kendall in crisis, this episode starts with a tapestry of the siblings. The morning after, Kendall is stressed out. Roman seems to be the most normal out of all of them in terms of his morning activities. And Shiv receives a call from her doctor. This will be our first pit stop. Did you understand this phone call? Because I didn't.
I fully understand this phone call, and I I understood it at the time as well. And I just want to say that as one of the first people on this chaotic internet to say that Shiv might be pregnant, I just want to state that
Okay, so explain this phone call.
my gigantic award should be sent to my home and not my office, as there is more space here. I'll just put it next to the guitars.
That's
No big deal.
I will have it engraved. So,
Thank you very
because I
much.
missed the word that the doctor said, and obviously our screeners don't have subtitles, so I couldn't really tell. Yeah. So
Subtitles, yeah.
what was it? What did she say? How did you know it was a pregnancy call?
She talked about blood work, first of all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she also mentioned something along the lines of of a 20-week check.
Okay.
So typically when it comes to early well, pregnancy treatments and stuff, anything that's like prepartum in that way, you would have frequent checks with your doctor to see how things are going, make sure everything is in order in terms of blood, in terms of like hormone levels, in terms of just general treatment, just so they can do checks and stuff. 20 weeks is obviously quite some time. That would mean that Shiv is essentially
That's
like
about 5
close to 5 months
months.
pregnant.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
wouldn't you like?
So she's really some people don't show like
Sure.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't show. Not everybody shows in exactly the same way. So that was kind of interesting to see, and it makes sense why. I mean, if you watch her with, now that you know this, and if you see the episode again,
We're going to talk about it.
watch her every time.
We're going to talk
Every time
about
she
it.
looks at Tom, she is very angry
We're
because she's like,
we're going to talk about it because even
yeah,
without this knowledge, I already had it. When it gets to that Tom and Shiv scene, we're going to talk about it. But now, as you're talking, I was like, oh, okay, a lot of it makes sense
yeah.
actually.
And when she tripped and fell, that's why it was a bit devastating. And she was trying to pick herself up so quickly because that could be a
It's
miscarriage.
funny because even when she tripped and fell, I already like shivered, even without the pregnancy knowledge. I mean, I guess it might give a good insight into where my brain is at right now. Because when they said blood work, I started thinking of like medical issues. I wasn't even thinking of like obviously I knew pregnancy was a possibility, but I was just thinking it's just sick, stuff like that. Okay, so yeah, we can move on. Guys, I apologize because I'm not a medical professional, even though I'm sure you might have been confused about that in the previous episodes. It's funny because I think that's the second pregnancy lecture I've received in as many weeks. If you listen to our Yellow Jackets episode, you will understand that that's true. Anyway, so yeah, Kendall arrives at the apartment for the wake, where he's met by Marsha, who assures him that not only has she been
Another
speaking.
thing I said would happen.
Yeah. But did you know Did you know that Marsha has been speaking to Logan every morning and every afternoon, and then having phone sex at night? Like every day, they've had a full schedule every single day. Marsha can
We
fuck
speak
all the way up.
intimately every evening. I mean, how is she gonna come here and say that? How did she arrive at this place before Kendall anyway? Like, I'm just
Marsha can fuck all the way up with her life. She's crazy. She said
okay. So to be clear, you don't believe her whatsoever.
that word that they were speaking every morning
Zero.
and afternoon, and then having phone sex at night every day. Come on, Marsha. At least make it a bit believable. Maybe say twice a week, every day.
I find that so interesting because it's such a contrast because Marsha is trying to make herself seem as close to the situation as possible,
Yeah.
the situation she's in, and Hugo, who Hugo is trying to be as distant from his own situation as possible. We can get to Hugo
Yeah, we'll
later,
touch on
but
Hugo.
wow, like yeah.
I mean, I don't
Oh my
believe her,
god.
like I just said, but it wouldn't
Hmm.
be unlike Logan to have like become disenchanted with
Yeah.
Kerry, which I don't think he was, but like, and then just be talking to Marsha
Or
constantly.
at the very least trying to keep Marsha happy on some level because her not being happy costs him money. We saw at the beginning of season
Mm,
3
yeah.
that it physically costs him
But I
money.
don't even think, yeah, but I don't think if he was talking to her
Yeah.
every day, I don't think it'd be about him making her happy. I think it'd be what he wants. Because I think Marsh, I
Mm.
mean, we haven't,
I think it was just like check-in. Maybe they had like an arrangement or
yeah,
something, and Carrie wasn't aware of her own place in this arrangement, which kind of results in the way Marsha treats her in the episode. And it's so funny because Logan clearly has, and I don't even really believe in types like that, but like Logan clearly has a type. Like looking at Carrie, looking at them next to each other is like, wow, this person could be
yeah.
like a young Marsha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Kendall arrives at the wake. He walks through all the people that give condolences, including our favorite Hitler sympathizer, Mark Ravenhead. The siblings hug and they're as normal as you can expect from the Roy siblings. But then something weird happens, right? And Shiv notices Tom, which obviously, like I said, we'll talk about it again in a minute. And Sarah does some incredible facial acting. But then
Hmm.
something happened that triggered my soap opera brain, that triggered top of my brain
Okay.
that doesn't usually come into effect when watching a show like Succession. Um, Greg walks into frame and Shiv kind of moves her head almost as if she doesn't want to make eye contact with Greg.
Yeah, she I think it's like she associates them with each other, right? So like she was looking in that direction, she saw Tom and immediately started frowning. And
Yeah.
then as Greg started to come up, she's looking away. She's like, "Yeah, I'm not looking at you guys." Like just going out of her way to be like, "I'm not looking at you guys," which
So that
makes it
is
very obvious that she's trying not to look at them.
so that is the very rational and like layered examination of the whole thing.
I know you are not about to tell me that you think she slept with Greg.
But then when you have had
Oh
doing the
my
like
god, you
"Don't
are.
touch me" last
Holy shit.
week
Okay. Okay,
to
sure.
Greg, I don't think she slept with Greg. I would never write that she slept with Greg. I'm just like I said, this is the days of our lives part of my brain. This is the young and restless part of my brain. This is the when you are mine Paloma part of my brain working. This is the Jane the Virgin part of my brain working.
Oh wow.
I,
Okay.
I look. I'm just saying. I don't see how that would work. I don't see why it would work. It would be very in line with everybody involved in the situation. That Greg would do that to Tom, that she would want to do that. It would make sense why she kept on bringing up Greg in episode 1 about the disgusting brothers. It just seemed like two very harsh reactions to Greg. Last week it was the "Don't touch me," and now it's this. I don't. This is not. I'm not even about to sleep on this hill talking about dying on it. It's not a hill. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that what came to my mind. This is a safe space. It's just you and I and no one else. So I'm just saying what is
You
there.
know what? I had I gotta hand it to you. That's not something I would have predicted to hear today.
I'm
Wow.
just yeah.
Okay.
Look, I'm just anyway.
That
Look.
is interesting.
I very much expect to be wrong, but look, we'll see. Is
We
you
will see. I
miss?
mean, Nicholas Braun said the end of the season is wild. That's the word he used. So now you're scaring me.
Well, okay. I'll talk about this later when I have some random points. But I've heard. that I think it was Holly Reporter that tweeted or mentioned that every episode this season is a day. And obviously we've seen 4 now, and each 4 has been
Yeah, I mentioned
4
that last
days.
week as well. Brian Cox believed that too, as in his own portrayal. So
Yeah,
I'm
but
kind of
obviously for him it was
evaluating it everywhere.
because
Yeah,
he died. So for him it was
yeah,
actually a day each. But if it's going to be a day, 10 days. Obviously, they said the election is coming up this week, so I'm sure there's going to be an election episode.
hmm
But then obviously 10 days doesn't give much time for Shiv to start showing, which I guess was good in terms of the writing.
hmm
But yeah, I mean, we'll find out what happens. Okay, so Tom goes to meet Frank, Jerry, Carl, and Carolina, where they're discussing who could possibly be the next CEO.
No, where they're looking at the China. You have to be discreet.
China. Oh, Frank, so dramatic. It's like, I've loved everything that Carl has done on this show, but as someone
But
who
this,
saw someone who saw David Rasher on Veep, I'm glad he finally got a chance to do this. Like his takedown of Tom. I have it here word for word. You're a clumsy interloper and no one trusts you. The only guy pulling for you is dead, and now you're just married to the boss's daughter. She doesn't
and
even
she doesn't
like
even
you.
like you.
You are square and fairly fucked. Just like,
That was just
and
like,
here,
wow.
he obviously had the classic, it's not me that is saying it's them. They're announcing
Yeah,
it, not me.
yeah.
And the way
Like
Tom's
Tom
face
is really
falls.
striking out everywhere he goes in this episode, and
Tom,
this is
we'll talk
just the
about
beginning.
Tom. We'll
This
talk
is
about
just the
Tom.
beginning. Like Carl is so hilariously savage, and it's such an interesting um switch of tone from what we're just seeing with Kendall walking in, right? Like that dirge of Kendall walking through the apartment is kind of like a dark mirror of the walk Logan made through the condo in season in episode 1 of this season, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like people he barely cares about are throwing platitudes at him for the sake of it and for the sake of favor. It's kind of like Cersei's walk of shame, but fully clothed, and the stones and spit are condolences and irritation. So it's sort of like this similarity. Maybe that's a slight nod visually
I'm sure it was. Yeah.
to him potentially being the successor, at least in spirit.
Mm.
And it's kind of like a foreshadowing of what's coming in later in the episode, because as all those people were saying all
That's
those
a good
things.
pull. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a
all
good
those
pull.
things, all those people saying all those things really made me think about that, because Logan walked through as well. It's like, I don't want to see or talk to any of you, but here you are,
Yeah.
right?
And it's kind of the same people. Well, I don't know if Mark
Similar
was at
people.
Logan's birthday, but
He
we
probably
obviously
would have
know
been.
Sid was
Yeah.
the other guy that I keep forgetting his name, but he's the guy that
Ray.
Logan tells to
Yeah. His name is Ray.
Ray, yes, Ray, yeah. Tells to piss in the cup during the ball on the floor episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just barrel on. Let's go. I mean, lots of what happened in that scene with the higher ups is I can't remember what they call them in the episode.
Senior management.
There was something, yeah, but there was an insulting term they gave. I can't remember.
Tom called them seasoned graybeards.
Yeah, I think something like that. By the way, I think there's some birds singing outside my
Yeah, I was going to
window.
say I'm hearing something whistling.
Oh, so you're hearing it? Okay, so
Yeah.
I do apologize, listener. If anyone is, I don't know. Unfortunately, I cannot control nature as much as I would really wish I could. But so yeah, please try to filter that out. I apologize. But yeah, a lot of this scene with the graybeards was what you kind of predicted last week. So there's nothing here surprising. Like we always know they're going to just so we could spend an entire episode analyzing the just so that'll be fun, if only for things like Jerry saying your what did she say, your melancholy is getting all over the tacos
Yeah, if you're
or
so
something.
sad while you're eating fish tacos.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm distraught. It's like, okay, well, you might want to put down the fish taco. You're getting your melancholy everywhere. Like, that's such a good line. My goodness.
Yeah. So Greg tries to console the siblings in his very Greggy
because the
way.
family should stick together. They should stay strong and support each other.
And he smartly and also quite transparently tries to wave his Uncle Ewan vote in the air.
Be like, yeah, don't get rid of me just yet.
Yeah, the siblings are inviting, and then Roman gets a call from Matson, which they ignore to try and get their ducks in a row. Again, this is all just plot stuff, nothing. I think this boy might have got a friend. I do apologize, guys. I don't know what song they are singing. Okay, so a quick run through of things that happen in the next few minutes. Greg continues to make the rounds, this time with Marsha. More on that in a second. Willa and Marsha exchange barbs. Incredible. Connor buys the apartment for $63 million.
Check. I don't
And
like it,
Kendall
but
tries
check.
to talk about therapy with his siblings.
Check.
So those are things that obviously we don't need to get into. But then Hugo
Except I
confides
just want
in
to make sure that I just want to mention very
yeah.
briefly that place is not worth $63 million. I'm sorry, but it's not.
Well,
It's just not.
well, you
But
see, you don't want to pay realtor fees. Also, it's very expensive to get in this kind of buildings. Like these are legacy buildings, according to Connor.
that transaction, even the spit shake of it, just everything just made my head hurt.
The spit check was here. It was so random. Like I'm just like,
Bro,
Marsha, what life did you live before you?
I'm
Were
telling you,
you,
Marsha is a rogue. I've said it
were you a
before.
Mossad agent? What the? Why you doing a spit check?
Bro, she fleeced him completely. Okay, for reference, the condo that Kendall bought for Rava, that we see him having his meetings in the early episodes of season 3, that
Yeah.
place is currently on the market for about 23 million, right? And that place is nice. I do not see Logan's place being worth 3 times the cost of that place. I'm just
But isn't
sorry. Like,
Logan's place like more floors,
it's Logan's place has
more rooms and stuff?
more floors, yes. Um, however, I think in terms of like this, it feels a bit more compact. There are more rooms and everything, and it's in a more prestigious building for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Location, things like that. Yeah.
I still think Connor is slightly overpaying, but
Oh,
that's just
100%
me.
Connor was.
Like,
That's not. I don't think that's up for debate. Like,
okay. Like, you
we
don't want
were,
to pay realtor fees. Like, yeah, let's not pay the realtor like, an extra
Marshall said 60 to
100,000. You might as well just
70.
throw Marsha an extra 10, 15 million. Okay, good for you.
Oh my god. Anyway,
Imagine.
Hugo confides in Kendall that his daughter went all Harper Stern the day before and did some insider
Very
trading on
good.
the news. Thank you.
Very good.
I find a way. Insider trading on the news of Logan's death. This will, if you want the episode, you guys know this will obviously come in handy towards the end of the
Oh,
episode, which we'll
100%.
talk about as well. The code book scene is one of my best scenes this season. I love seeing this kids like happy and laughing with each other.
It's
I thought
nice.
it was just like it's a hilarious, like it's like you forget that, and obviously these kids are being written by very funny people, but these kids are funny, right? And like they can be like most characters on this show are just funny, right? Apart from obviously being written by funny people, that's why they are funny. But like for example, complicated man equals to through phones at staff, sharp reader of the national mood is a bit racist. All of that was just really good.
Loved it.
Ending it with Kendall saying he did not fuck children because he didn't want to hug his grandchildren is spectacular. Like Jesse and Lucy would have been like, I can't believe like when they landed on that line, they were like, this is hilarious. We're taking a day. We're done for today because it's incredible. It's just incredible. It's like, I just really, really love that scene.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to what I think then propels the drama of the rest of the episode and probably the rest of the season if things are going to go in kind of the way we expect, which in succession, that's probably not true. Frank shows Carl a piece of paper, which leads them to speculate in a comic mode, in a humorous vein. Right, they only speculated that maybe a breeze shall throw the paper out of Frank's hand and somehow land in the toilet where it gets flushed. Maybe in a humorous vein. I'm not gonna let you. Carl
Ingest.
might have been the MVP of this episode. This might have
That's
been
what I'm
Carl's
saying,
episode.
bro. That's what I'm saying.
This
Carl
might have been
was
Carl's episode.
killing it today. He really was. All these side comments and not even. It's not even just that. I don't know if you. I feel like I didn't hear it initially, but then I listened again,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like this man is like, look, I want the top job, or I want an exit package. I'm halfway on a Greek island with my
Yeah,
brother-in-law.
my brother-in-law.
I
I'm just
was
like,
like,
what does his
what?
brother-in-law do? Who is his wife? Like, what?
Bro, what? Carl's like, please, if I'm not, just let me go. I just want to buy my island. I'm like, wow. First of all, Carl has enough money to buy an island. Like, I don't know if y'all know, but islands are not cheap. Like
Well, he
everybody,
revolutionized cable TV in the 90s. That's like 30 years.
fair
That's
enough,
30 years of hard work.
fair enough.
Yeah, they removed Carl's tie and let him loose. Like this person, I think I'm seeing without a tie, and they just let him loose.
Truly,
Um, yeah, so Carl is great. Anyway, Jerry walks in on Frank and Carl talking about this piece of paper, and between the three of them, they chicken out and decide to tell the siblings and Greg. More on that later about the
they should have
paper.
flushed it down the toilet, but yeah, okay.
really should have. It has saved us so much stress, man. Like everyone would have just been happier off if this guy's just
I
close
think
up
that's
the
honestly the
toilet.
reason that Logan would have allowed Frank, who he's had such a checkered relationship with in recent years, to be the executor of his estate. I actually thought that was a surprising touch. When he said, "Oh, as executor of his estate," I was like, "Oh, okay. I did not realize that was you." So I guess good
I
for
don't
you,
think
Frank.
would Logan trust anyone else more than he trusts Frank.
That's the
40
thing.
years is
That's the thing. Frank is still the best choice. It just shows that
yeah.
relationships really do stand the test of times. Here and there, because Frank is the most, I say, the most rational of the senior management
Mm,
after Jerry.
yeah.
So
Yeah. Um, so apparently in the letter says that Logan wrote that Kendall, well, he would want Kendall to be CEO. Then he either underlined it or crossed it out.
mm-hmm.
And then he also made some additions in pencil, including one of which was Greg, such as Greg and question mark. Let me take a pause here and do a mea culpa. Well, it's not really a mea culpa because, nah. But I've been seeing some things in the, obviously we said we'll change this if any news came out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the early Times did an obituary for Logan Roy
They did.
stating that he was 84. I don't think the early Times would do that without kind of like a go ahead from
Yeah.
Succession itself.
Or my assumption actually when I
Yeah.
saw that was they just went with, we're in the 4th season, let's just add 4 years. That was what
Yeah,
I
but
thought.
wouldn't they have confirmed that with HBO? I thought that wouldn't they have confirmed that with HBO before going ahead?
Perhaps, but I don't know. Like in my own head, it's been about 2 years. Like I think our 1 year assumption is a bit too tight. In my head, it's been about 2. I think 4 is a bit much personally, but
So here's the thing.
maybe.
That's my thing, and that's how I landed on 1. Because I always thought obviously 1 was stretching it, but I thought it was more logical to me than 4. Look, I'm 100% sure, no, 98.2% sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just Jesse Armstrong doesn't have a date in his head. He's just writing a show.
Yeah.
Like this is just for us. But so I'm still quite worried to go to 4. But the reason I'm bringing it up because this from the early times thing, this episode they bring out times, they bring out timelines. They say things like maybe Logan wrote that 4 years ago and changed it 18 months ago. So is the 4 years ago before the show started?
Yeah, that's what I'm
Or in
thinking.
season 1?
4 years
Before the show started,
4 years
right?
ago, because when Kendall shows up and he tells Logan like, "Oh, like what are you doing? What are you doing? Like you're kind of ruining all this by saying you're not going to retire." He specifically said you're ruining 2 years of corporate strategy. So I would assume that 4 years ago
Oh,
they
okay.
were still, that's when they were kind of like still in the throes of the process of making sure that Kendall looks like the heir apparent before Logan showed up and changed his mind. 18 months
Okay.
ago, like if we go with like, my 2 year assumption, then 18 months ago would have been when he's like, okay, something is wrong here. Because I think it also depends on like what you assume that line is. Is it a cross or is it an underline? What do you think?
Well, we're going to talk about that at the end, but wait, what do you have do you have a camp?
I'm not entirely sure. But
I think it's a cross.
yeah,
I think it's a cross.
I'm gonna say I feel like it's a cross just based on everything we've seen, especially if Greg's name is written in pencil near there.
So
For some
Greg's
reason,
name.
I don't know if that's just a spite Ewan, but
So Greg's name. So if Greg's name is 18 months, let's give him 18 months. It means obviously our 1 year thing's out the window because he didn't know Greg. He didn't know about Greg.
he didn't care about
You get what
Greg.
I
Like
mean?
Greg
He
was not
didn't
in the
know. Yeah.
forefront.
Yeah, before the show
Yeah.
started. So it has to have been 18 months, has to be. So maybe 2 years obviously makes more sense. Okay. So, but he just writes Greg question mark. Like, it could literally have been like, I'm trying to remember this guy's name.
Perhaps.
Like,
Yeah.
the funniest thing is that Roman says it's 50-50 whether he wanted to fire you or kill you. Mind you, he said 50-50, meaning there's no good, it means those are the only 2 options. Like, there's no even like good thing about you. Anyway, so which I think was the funniest line for the episode, which I want to say. This leads to Greg saying, well, maybe the natural conclusion might perhaps be, I'll be his number 2.
No.
And it will be, if I tell you I screamed.
Me, you, Frank, Carl, Jerry, Roman, Shiv, Kendall, we all started dying at the same time. Like I'm telling you, we were laughing. I've not laughed like that watching the show in a while. And that's even including Hugo almost going to jail. Like that one made me I
Hugo.
was losing my mind. I was like, not Hugo going like almost going to jail. Perhaps maybe at some point potentially going to jail this season for insider trading
Mm-hmm.
at your big age. Insider trading. Hugo, how long have you been doing this?
Okay, but do you think he knew? Do you think he knew? I don't think he
I
knew.
don't think he
I think
knew.
it's all his daughter.
But how did
Yeah.
his daughter find out?
No, he told his daughter, but he's probably like trying to make conversation. He told her that Logan was dead, but his daughter went and did business on it.
Well, I think to be fair, if we're being really honest here, I think it is possible to separate him from his daughter in this
From his
situation,
daughter. Yeah.
because she did the purchase on her own and is old enough to kind of run through that. He didn't do anything, but then a good lawyer can probably argue that they were in it together. So who
Oh
knows,
yeah. I mean, so the Greg thing, I laughed so hard that I didn't realize that Frank was laughing as well.
bro?
And Frank laughing makes it so much funnier. Do you know why? Because I don't think people don't usually laugh at things like that on this show.
Yeah, especially
Like
not to
when Greg
people's
says,
faces, but that just
yeah,
shows how
when
nobody
Greg says
rates
things like
Greg.
they just I just insult you, they just move on. They never really like laugh at the things that we find funny.
Yeah.
Very rarely they laugh about them on the show. And I was like, this is actually so funny that Frank is laughing at it because like
That's
Frank's
when
like,
I knew, like,
wait,
bro, this
how
is
did you make that conclusion?
funny. Like, I looked up, like, as I was out of breath, I looked up and saw Frank laughing. I was like, wow, we are eating right now.
Yeah. Okay. So we've obviously mentioned the letter, and it leads us to, I guess, maybe the question we need to discuss, which is when everybody leaves, Kendall asks Frank, "Do you think this is real?" Blah blah blah, and then Frank says to Kendall, "Ken, you've got stuff cooking. You seem so
Do you
well.
really want back in?
You
Yeah,
really
I
want
felt
back
that.
in." And just like
It's such a fair question. Like, you're doing better than you have in maybe a
he can't
decade.
answer. He can't say
Yeah.
yes because he cannot bring her to actually say yes, even though we know yes, obviously, but he cannot say because him saying the words is almost like, why do you guys want this? And this actually goes to all siblings. Obviously, Shiv
Mhm.
makes the joke about should we just let Kendall have it because it's terrible. But it's like all the siblings kind of want this, as we find out a bit later. It's like, why? Why do you guys want this? You're out. You're literally about just let somebody. You're about to get out of this.
They want it because they've been taught on some level that they should want it, and because they're their father's children, they crave power for the sake of
Yeah, it's
power.
their will, isn't
It's
it?
interesting because
Yeah.
if Kendall had really matured as much as we hoped he had in these past 3 seasons, he would be able to say, "This is cool that my name is here, but in all honesty, I don't want it." He can check out.
Mm-hmm.
He can, and he was at a point where, like at the end
God,
of season 3, where he was going to check out.
I was willing him to
Like
do
he
it. I
can just
was
say,
willing
"Listen,
him to
like
do that.
I'm in a better place now. I will support whoever is there." In fact, here is Roman. He's somebody that seems to have been chosen by dad recently. He's really dialed into the business right now, more so than me, and he can co-lead with Shiv. I will support them as their brother, and I'm going to work on my own projects for now. Spend time with my children. Yes, yes, listeners, I'm bringing up his children again.
Free these children, man.
Oh, I'm not the one who freed them. Kendall freed them. They're the ones looking for him. Whatever. Please continue.
Everybody, these children raise child services for the Roy King, right? Yeah, like I mean, look, we can probably spend another extended 20 minutes talking about being. Even though I'm saying what they want, I know what they wanted. This is like Logan has, like you said, Logan has made them feel like they have to. Like if this is up for grabs, you have to want it. Like it's like you just like you cannot say no to this because if you do, you're losing the big contest. Like you have to want this thing. You have to fight for this thing. It is your birthright. You have to like you have to prove that you're deserving. And I'm like, it's like it's Logan hunting them from his grave. And yeah, they're not. I don't think they're ever gonna be. And this is what I think the show is about. Well, no, let me not say that because that's a very generalized statement, and I haven't thought about this properly to give such an in-depth statement. But I do think I care more about the show of like, will these kids ever be healthy enough to walk away than the show of who's going to become CEO, like who's going to wear the crown at the end. It's like that's not the thing that I try. It's like it's this cycle of abuse with these kids that they never like. Is the show about trauma that I'm more interested in. I love a great business show every day of the week, but I'm more interested in this part of like, would these kids ever be healthy enough to be like, actually, you guys are selling Gojo in 6 months. I'm fine taking a step back and we're gonna get peers. And then they keep on saying this bullshit about, oh, we'll fold ATN in and
Yeah,
peer. Like,
when I heard that, I
no,
actually laughed out loud. That's
no,
literally like saying
no.
CNN and Fox News are going to become one company. Are
Folks,
you
like,
mad?
how? Who's your audience? What are you talking about? Like, I'm pretty sure the right wing don't want to watch Africa the show, or rather homework the show Africa all the time. Like,
Yo,
that's not what they
wow, they
want to
really
watch.
suggested that.
Uh,
Crazy.
same way, same way the left don't want to see Mark Ravenhead on their screens. Like, what are you talking about? Anyway, yeah. So like, there's some just incredible shots. There's that shot of obviously the camera on Kendall, and you see Shiv looking at him in the background. All this like that. Yeah. Um, I can imagine like Lauren seeing the screen like, oh, everything is in one in one house. I mean, there's obviously big and spacious. As how do I actually make this episode visually interesting? And she obviously did that definitely. Um, Shiv and Tom. Shiv and Tom have a heart to heart on the stairs, in which Shiv delivers the incredible line of, "I guess you already picked the wrong horse. You picked a dead horse," which is
Mm,
terrible gambling on Tom's part.
mm,
Um, Tom talks about the first time they had sex, and again we get another mention of the terrible state that Shiv was in when they met. At this point, I don't know if we're going to get more backstory on that kind of terrible state. Might just be off for our imagination. But so we're going to talk about the thing about touching, like you said. I have never seen, and I hate when I even people make statements like that because I probably have, I can't remember. But for the sake of podcast, I'll just say I have never seen a breakup like Tom and Shiv's on TV before. Like every time Tom either asks for permission to touch her or hug her, or even every time he tries to do it without asking for permission, the way Shiv recoils, and this was I was thinking this before I even thought about the pregnancy. The way Shiv recoils or even outrightly says no is just it's so real. I don't know how to put it. Like
yeah.
it's like anyone who's ever had a like a bad period in a relationship, or even just a fight, a really bad fight. Like that is a real thing. That is like it's like like you're trying to like I cannot like feeling you physically will make me sick.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. And again, it's a very important contrast to the fact of how season 3 ended when Tom is holding her and she's feeling that sickness, but she manages to hold
Yeah.
it in because she doesn't have at that point the courage or she's not ready to tell him, no, don't touch me. And then now, like, she's done it so many times, which is again why I guess the Greg don't touch me thing stuck in my head because, like, he's the only person that she's done that to. But, like, after the press conference in last week's episode, Tom asked, "Can I hug you?" And she obviously says yes. But then this time, like on the stairs when he tries to, and she's just like, "No." Just I don't know. That the dynamic is just very, very interesting to me. It's very real. I'm just like I've never actually seen it like a drawn out breakup like this before. And every look she shares with him, obviously, again, actually, yes, you talk about that, including the knowledge of that she might be pregnant.
Yeah.
Actually, wait, sorry, before that, because the doctor said like they might have been expecting bad news. So like, why would that have been?
I guess maybe she wasn't sure, or maybe she, um, maybe there's something genetic that that's in play. Maybe it's just something to do
Okay.
with her.
Yeah.
We weren't really given much information. I'd have to listen to the call again,
Yeah.
but um,
No, that we
yeah,
didn't get
but there
much
was
from the call. That's I
there
remember because
wasn't
yeah,
too much there. It's just, and that's one thing I like about some of these conversations that they have on the show, right? Like there are lesser shows that will make sure that like all the information is inside there for us, the listener. But that call went
yeah,
exactly how it would go if real people were like getting a call from their doctor about this subject. So I
yeah, and also just the fact that the show just never cares about it again. Like we spend the rest of the episode never even.
yeah
She doesn't have like a moment where she touches her
yeah
belly or like
we just
he
see
like
the
looks at a
emotional
child. Or it's
effects
just
of it.
the episode forgets
I
about
think
it.
the
Yeah.
only real
Mm-hmm.
acknowledgement to
Anyway,
it,
sorry,
yeah,
continue.
the only real
Actually,
acknowledgement to it that they
yeah,
make is that fall. I think
yeah,
that call is essentially contextualizes that fall and makes it very real to the audience. Because when you know what that call means and you see her fall, you're like, oh my god, right? Um, and she is trying to, she puts on this very like brave face and business voice to deal with the people she has to deal with, but she's usually in conflict with herself, about what she has to do and who she can trust. I think she's very afraid of being fully loved on some level. I don't think that she feels like she kind of deserves it on some, which is a bit of a contrast to Kendall because I think he believes he deserves love. He just doesn't understand why he isn't getting it. And Roman is, yeah,
that's that's
and
very good.
Roman honestly is somewhere in the middle in that he just wants everybody to get along. And I think it's easy to see Roman as a very confrontational person, and because he's such a like fast talking, like, you know, yeah, is,
Insult throwing. Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
he actually just, if you really look at it, every time something is going on and there's some type of conflict or whatever, if there's a way for it to be resolved quickly and everybody's actually just like on good terms, Roman is like the first person to go for that usually. So
Oh, he's the ultimate
yeah,
middle
yeah, I
child,
guess
isn't
so.
he? He's like he wants top and the bottom to
So
get
yeah, like
along.
with
Yeah.
when Shiv was talking to Tom on those stairs, I think on some level she wanted to kind of be close to him, but she's also recoiling because she doesn't want him to know about the pregnancy, because that changes things in their dynamic. It changes things in their potential divorce and separation. Which, by
Mm-hmm.
the way, before doing all this stuff and like calling out all the lawyers, they really should have just gotten a mediator. But anyway, um,
Yeah, forgetting where they were emotionally. Mediator was not going to do anything.
well, I think that that's something they should consider now. If Tom is as, quote unquote, amenable and wanting to work things out as nicely and smoothly as possible, as he says. But yeah, I don't know what Tom's angle there was. Reminding her of the place she was in when they met. I don't know if that was his way of being like, I've always actually been there for you. Maybe there's a way forward here for us.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what that felt like to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she still wants to kind of hold out. I don't know what she's planning to do regarding the pregnancy. I don't know who she intends to tell. Eventually, she will start showing. I don't know if the show is going to, get to that point, but I think it's probably going to happen soon.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If this season is 10 days, then it probably won't be showing. Unless we do a fast forward and we see her give birth to a 6 foot child, and we know that the child is actually Greg's.
Hilarious. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what to make of her interactions or lack of interactions with Greg, but I feel like just the way she keeps looking at him, there's a part of
Please don't give yourself, don't think about the Greg
her.
theory. Please, that's a
I
bedtime
guess
story.
so.
That's not anything that should.
Nightmare
Don't give you
story,
any
but yeah,
credence.
I guess
Well,
I
yeah.
guess just the way she keeps avoiding real eye contact with Tom says it all, really, because eye contact is a
Mm-hmm.
very big part of connection. Like when you're really trying to get on someone's level, you have to look at eye contact. I talked last week about how Logan doesn't give people eye contact, which is why nobody's ever on his level. He's never really communing with people
Yeah.
except maybe
Yeah.
Marsha. And I guess I suppose Carrie too, but if you really watch them, he's hardly ever actually looking at her. So
Yeah, he's only in
yeah.
front of her, but
There's
slightly in
definitely a power
front.
dynamic in their
But
relationship.
no, no, I think yeah, which we fair to relationship. I do think they still like they don't maybe they don't even eye contact. They communicate
Yeah,
in that
exactly.
relationship. I think him and Carrie. Um, Speaking about Carrie, actually, Colin arrives
Wearing
at the house
jeans.
and then
Look at that. Colin wearing denim,
wearing
man.
jeans
Having
and
a
having
son
his
and a
son.
wife. Mad.
And I think him having his son was very again might have just been a random thing that they wrote it, but I just immediately remember the end of episode 1, the end of the
Mm,
pilot, like when he gives that kid
the watch.
the the watch. He was thinking, and obviously again this episode he mentioned that like Logan is leaving the
Yeah.
watch to Colin. Anyway, so Colin arrives with his family, and then shortly after we see him at the end of a conversation with Marsha, which again scheming all around, and Marsha kind of shares this look with him, and then that's when Carrie comes up, despite Marsha telling her not to arrive. Um,
I feel
Carrie
I
kind
feel
of
like a
breaks
lot of
down because
people I
she
feel
wants
like a
to
lot of
go up.
people are not sympathizing with Carrie. But I don't know. I feel like Marsha was a bit too heavy-handed, but
Oh, of course.
there are
Oh,
people
I,
I'm sure who will feel that Marsha is fully justified. It's like, okay, you were sleeping with my husband. You're kind of like a younger version of me. I
yeah,
resent you. And at the same time, you've now come here. We've told you not to show up here. You're showing up and now you want to go upstairs to do what exactly? I can kind of see both sides here, but at the same time, I feel like, I agree with Roman in that Marsha may have been a bit too callous in that moment. Even them saying, Colin coming out on
yeah.
his day off to be like, take her out the back. So I was just like, wow.
and the way he steps.
She's like calling
So
us all we're
obviously,
friends.
I am. Yeah, I thought we just shared this car ride the night before,
Like,
last night, so we're both crying. So obviously, I'm like the captain of the Kerry Hate
yes, you
Club,
are.
right? But on their side, I fucking love actors and I fucking love acting. And the main thing about acting is that you have to empathize with your character to be able to obviously do a good job. And like I understand Kerry's point of view. The cheating with Logan, all that is terrible, all of that. But like in this particular moment, you understand the despair that
Hmm.
she's feeling, and you can see it on Zoe Winters' face because she's doing very, very good
Really, really
acting.
shook.
And then her stuff falls down, and Roman shows
Yeah,
her kindness, which struck me because I think that might
I
come
think
back to
so
play a
too. Yeah,
part.
I think, yeah.
Because I think with this show, anytime one of these genuinely awful people shows a bit of real kindness, it's usually rewarded. Think back to season 2, Kendall giving Greg
Hmm.
the apartment, right? That was just kindness out of Kendall's. Like, obviously, he wanted to have a party there that night, but beyond that, he was just giving Greg an apartment because Greg
Yeah.
was being his friend, right? And then what happened? Greg repays that kindness at the end of the season. Um, I can't seem to think of any other kindness moment out of my head, but you get what I mean. Like, whenever they and like Roman showing her kindness in that moment is very not out of character,
It
surprising.
doesn't
That's a better
surprise me
word,
actually.
right? Because
And I can and I
yeah,
can
because
explain
he's so
why.
emotionally
There's
attuned,
that,
isn't he?
and there's also the fact that I think he's the most like Logan in a lot of ways. At least in terms
Hmm.
of um
Can I just say something quickly, just to know how, let you know how good this writing on the show is? I think you ask 10 different people who is the most like
yeah, you get
Logan.
10
I
different
think you
answers,
get 10 different
100%. Yeah.
answers.
I think, yeah, what I
But
would say
continue,
is
please.
he's most like Logan um in terms of managing relationships, let's put it that way. I think Kendall and
Hmm.
Shiv
Okay.
have a little bit more of the business acumen. Not that Roman doesn't have any, but I think Roman is, you can say Kendall and Shiv are Roman's children, but I think are Logan's children. But I think Roman is the one
Yeah.
who we can, to the greatest extent, say is the child of Logan and Caroline. I think, yeah,
Oof.
yeah,
Okay. That's not
I think that
okay.
having that distance from her, right? He, because he really had his
Hmm.
dad, and they had like a very weird relationship and all that. I mean, they've even talked about how like Roman probably was hit as a child by Logan and stuff like that. Yeah,
Oh, most definitely. Yeah.
there's this sense of endearment that Roman seems to have for Logan that the others don't as much. I think Roman, because he wants people to get along so much, he finds it a lot less difficult to hate or to really, really stay mad. Like Roman doesn't really hold grudges. Shiv holds grudges quite well. Kendall is capable of holding grudges, but he
Hmm.
typically would rather not. Right. Um,
Hmm.
and then Connor, he copes by being distant, right? Well, it was actually very sad when he said that he's learned to live in this family without love. Like that's quite a lot, to hear
Hmm.
from somebody who's the first child and tends to be overlooked.
And
Yeah,
who was their dad
essentially he helped to raise them.
taking
So
them
I
camping
mean,
and stuff? Yeah.
I think Roman is not he is kind of carried not just because of that, kind of, I guess, emotional integrity, but it's also because he's kind of like Logan in a lot of ways, and he's showing that kindness to Carrie because to him now she's an extension of his father, at least recently. I think he shows her that kindness
Hmm.
because of her relationship with his father. And it's like, well, you're not necessarily one of us, but at the very least, dad likes you, right? Dad liked you, and he, for somebody who's claiming to have pre-grieved, right? I think he has to kind of let that out somehow. He's dealing with it in this way. Also, they talked about
Hmm.
Carrie.
Hmm.
Like Roman knows that for all the issues that are underlying here, Logan actually liked Carrie, was infatuated with her. At the end of season 3, they were on that boat together, and Carrie's in front, and Logan taps Roman and says, "That's a good-looking woman, huh?" Which is weird, but you know that yeah, that kind
Add
of
it to the
tells
list.
you, how he was willing to share that with his son, and you can see from the way Karen Culkin plays it in that moment when Logan tells him that, how he's like, okay, well, I would have thought Carrie was just kind of something that didn't matter, but clearly it's like, she matters a little bit to you. And I think that kind of builds up Carrie as something, you know, worth acknowledging over time. And they even have a little bit of banter and insults here and there since then, between then and now. So I think he's like,
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
be at least a little bit decent to her. And I think it's because of those factors. His
yeah.
emotional intelligence, surprising emotional intelligence in this way, his relationship with Logan, and his desire to kind of uphold what Logan cared about.
Yeah, I mean, he's always had. Yeah, this season has really shown his emotional intelligence because even the rehearsal, he's the one that kept on saying we have to go check in on
Yeah.
Connor. Um. Anyway, speaking of Kerry mattering, so again, we don't have subtitles on the screeners, but I think I caught in that conversation between her and Roman. I think I caught her saying that Logan was talking about them getting married.
Okay.
Okay, so you didn't catch that. So maybe you could go. Maybe you go back and listen to that
I
to
okay.
that
I
scene.
thought she was. It sounded like
But
indistinct, like very shook babbling to me. But yeah, I'm definitely gonna go listen to that again because
yeah,
what?
because I heard something about he said we're gonna get married and some stuff, and then she told him Roman to go check on something. He
Yeah,
was like, I
I
don't have
heard
your
that.
personal
Yeah,
number and stuff. But I
I
heard
wasn't
married.
sure
I
that I heard
definitely heard
married. I
married.
heard like
But
she
obviously,
was saying that maybe there were plans or whatever. He said this, he said that. I just didn't catch the word married. But okay,
yeah.
that is it,
But we'll confirm when it's out
yeah,
on HBO stroke Sky. Um,
or brave.
okay, there are two things we need to hit before we end here. So I'll just keep on run through some of the plot points. Lip balm, Tom Wham. After striking out to Kendall, goes to cozy up with Roman. Him and Greg are just flying around. Actually, speaking of Greg, in that moment, there are two other reactions to that whole Carrie situation. Obviously, Roman, like we said, is showing her kindness. But Shiv is in a weird place where you can tell that she's a bit uncomfortable with what Marsha is doing, but she never like tries to help. She never tries to get involved. She's just like, yeah, like she doesn't think it's right, but she's not
I
really
think Shiv just
that
doesn't
bothered.
like Carrie. Yeah.
Greg, on the other hand, yeah, Greg on the other hand is
And
being
what
particularly
is it with
mean.
Greg and his side
And
comments throughout the episode? Why?
yes, so I do think Greg is trying to latch onto
He's
into a
trying to
camp,
make
and
sure he
he's
endears
doing
himself to Marsha.
the perfect thing, which is yeah. So he's trying whatever. He cannot support Kerry if he's trying to endear himself to Marsha. So he's trying to insult Marsha. There's a moment earlier when he's like, Marsha will catch up
What
later.
do
It's
you
like,
mean
Greg,
by
what the
that?
fuck do you think you're doing? But yes, I do think he's trying to endear, but he's being very mean in that scene. And again, it's like that following the fact that he cancelled her
Yeah.
ATN dreams a couple days ago could obviously give Kerry some malice towards Greg. Okay, so then yeah, Tom is obviously again floating around he tries it with Tom. So he tries it with Kendall. Kendall is like, I like you. Good luck.
That
Nothing
was
else.
so.
And he tries it with Roman
When
as
I heard
well.
that, I was like, "Oh my goodness, ouch!" That was wild. Remember last time? Last time they tried. It
Yeah, it
reminded me of
reminded me of
season
season one.
3. Actually, remember when they were in that?
Okay. Oh yes, when it was like that
Yeah,
Logan doesn't
and
get fucked, but he
Kendall's
gets fucked
just
a
like,
lot.
"Wow,
True.
how the tables have
True. I was thinking of
turned."
season one when I was thinking of season one when Kendall told him I like you.
Yeah,
I know you're
it
eating
was.
shit for me.
Yeah,
Okay, so the siblings meeting. There are two parts of the siblings meeting. There's the discussion and the resolution. I want to start with the discussion. If you have any thoughts on the discussion, I don't particularly have any thoughts. But you have any thoughts
I
on the
just think
discussion
him.
before they make a
I would have. I would
resolution?
have
Is there
yelled
anything you want to
too.
share?
It's like when they kept ignoring him. It was actually starting to irritate me. I was like,
Oh
"What?
yeah,
What
that
are
was
you people
frustrating. That was
doing?
frustrating as fuck. I
What are
was
you
like, Jesus
doing? Like,
Christ.
come on."
But that's such like younger sibling stuff. You're just like,
Yeah,
can we just be
because yeah,
serious?
I
Oh
think he had to do that on some level. And as for the discussion
yeah,
itself, I kind of see why Shiv is iffy because it's very easy, for
mm,
a future version of this conversation to be referred to in retrospect, and they'll be like, "Oh well, we said we wouldn't screw you over, but like, this happened, that happened." Like it's not like they have anything in writing, so I
yeah.
would be afraid too if I was her. I'd be very, very, very like trepidatious. So go
Can
ahead.
I make a bold statement? I loved last week's episode, obviously. I just need to say that for anyone that I don't know that is listening. the resolution to this meeting, the last few minutes of this meeting, was more emotional to me than anything
Really?
from last week. Because Shiv is begging
Yeah.
to not get fucked. She's begging to be part of it. But you can
You
see the fucking coming. You can see that they're gonna screw her over.
Yeah.
It's almost written 5 feet in front of you. I'm just like Shiv is again, like I said, I'm a sucker for great acting. Like Sarah is breaking down. She's already tearing up. She's trying to she's like, okay, that's fine. You guys have tried. You guys said I can't be part of this thing. I don't want to be front facing. I don't care about the ego.
Yeah.
I just want to be involved. I don't care about if people
Just
don't know
make
I'm
sure I'm
involved.
here.
Just involve me.
So much that she
Like,
starts
let's do this
lashing
as a
out at
family.
Sandy
But
for
you're
Ness.
and they're saying, yeah, it's fine.
That man really came to his enemy's house to smile after he
By
died.
the way, Sandy, every time I know, Sandy was 100% smiling
Oh yeah,
after she
100%.
fell. Like, he wasn't smiling before. So he started smiling. So, like, yeah, so fuck Sandy and his wheelchair. No, so, like, so, like, that was, it was so emotional to come, like, this is, like, it's like you can see this character about to make, and it's just like, guys, just be nice. Be nice. They say things like Roman. I don't know if Kendall is 100% what he's saying to that moment. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Like that he's going to stick to his word. I think Roman is 100% stick to his word. Like Roman says things like yesterday was real. You can tell that Roman is really holding on to the day that dad died. He says, I feel good about this being the relationship. She says something. She's like, a dad promise on yesterday. And it's just like, what are the conversations that we didn't see? Like, what did they were they like after today? Like, a dad promise sounds so heavy and sounds so like siblingy. I'm just like, oh my god, they're gonna fuck this girl up. They're gonna fuck her. And like, we're not gonna have this shit conversation because we're still trying to avoid having that, right? And I'm not like Shiv's biggest defender, but I think something that happens to me a lot is that whenever I feel like a character, especially a character for a show I really love, is being not even unfairly is the wrong word, is being stupidly judged or stupidly analyzed. Because unfairly could just be like you're angry, but like stupid as in you're deliberately missing the point. I usually get more defensive for that character. I think she falls into that bracket. I'm not gonna have that discussion today because we don't have the energy. But I think a lot of discourse of Shiv is terrible. We don't. I think a lot of discourse of Shiv is terrible, and that obviously makes me then like want to support her more than I actually really do care. I don't care about her that much, but anyway. So seeing this happen, I'm like, oh, this is bad because I feel like everyone else can see the fucking coming except you, Shiv. You just can't, and like you want to believe your brothers, and I think your brothers, for the most part, in that moment, believe what they're saying. But we know the show we're watching. We know that like that's not. Anyway, yeah, that was just it was quite emotional to me. I was like, this. I mean, I didn't cry, but it was quite emotional to me. But that was. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that resolution before?
Well, just from like a business perspective, it would make sense that the quote unquote co-COOs would kind of step up as interim recommendations for the top job by the board. But both these guys have been so detached from the company of late. I'm not even sure how everybody else went for it so easily, but it is what it is. Yeah, the name is there.
I mean, it's the name. Because I also, because maybe not all of them know, like not the entire board knows the whole situation. Because I remember during the premiere, I kept on thinking, I was like, it was interesting that they kept on saying we've drafted a resignation. So I was like, why did they keep saying that? Drafted? And then I was like, oh, okay, because they haven't, they're still part of the company, they haven't resigned. Because I was like, how is Roman still COO? And I was like, oh, yeah, he hasn't resigned. He's still just taking a leave of absence, basically. Anyway, that leads us to the end of the episode. After Kendall and Roman are voted in as co-CEOs, Carolina and Hugo informed them about 2 ways they can spin the news. That they are daddy's boys, or they shit on dad. Roman, especially, as you can expect, is against shit on dad. And Kendall,
the look on his face, the way he hesitates before saying that just makes so much sense now.
Yeah, he's almost like, actually, we don't want to consider it. But anyway, after looking at the letter again, he tells Hugo to sanction it, but very low key. Otherwise, the insider trading stuff will come up. So 2 questions for you. Well, 1 point and 1 question. Well, the 1 point is that Kendall has already begun not being a team player, which is like, it goes back to my point of Shiv getting fucked. But now in this case, he's already fucking Roman as well. He's co-CEO. But then the second thing is, the question is, what do you think of this decision, and why do you think Kendall does it? Why do you think Kendall makes this decision?
I think it probably has to do a little bit with what's on that page. He's remembering his dad telling him, "You're not a killer," right? He, yeah, he
I have killer written
remembers.
down as well. Yeah.
He remembers that when he looks at that document, which, by the way, I don't know if this is like, um, product supervision by Apple, but that scan was looking way too clean for no good reason. Like that wasn't even a scan; that was probably just a photograph. But anyway, it was looking so
Yeah,
clear.
I
I
thought it
was
was
like,
a
"What?"
photo.
But anyway,
I don't think it was a scan.
yeah,
Did you understand that apparently
I
villains
did
aren't
know.
allowed to use
Yes.
iPhones? I didn't know this.
So, right, it's a thing that's been there.
Yeah. Or rather,
Yeah, Apple
Apple doesn't allow
is so
villains to use
particular
iPhones. Yeah,
about
that's the better way to put it. Yeah.
their product marketing that in fictional work, if somebody is going to be the bad guy, they're not allowed to use an iPhone. And directors and producers are supposed to know this because Apple, even on a subconscious fictional level, doesn't want their products associated with evil in any way whatsoever. It's a thing. It's kind of a thing that's always been there, but and I had heard about it, but then Ryan Johnson actually kind of brought it into the fore when he was doing the, yeah, he was doing
Yeah, a couple of years back.
notes on the scene
Mm-hmm.
on Knives Out, and he talked about how certain people don't have certain phones, and then he kind of revealed it, and it's a thing people have been saying now. But for this season, just while we're on the topic, I did think about it because Shiv has always been an iPhone user. Kendall has always had both. But Roman has always actually been an Android user, but now all of them
Mm-hmm.
seem to be using the latest iPhone, which is very interesting to me.
And do you know who's using an Android?
Tom? Yeah, well, Tom has always
Tom.
been using Android, to be
Tommy
fair. But
Wami.
yes,
Big
Tom
Bang Tom.
Tom is using an Android, and that's interesting to me.
I mean, on this show,
That's the thing.
how do you say who the villain is on this show? Like, it's just a weird. Like, how would you differ? Anyway, but that was the random thing that I
It's
only
definitely.
found out
I don't
about
know if it's
recently.
something that'll play into it, the only reason I'm even bringing it because I feel like that, for some reason I feel like Jesse Armstrong is above all that, but on some in some way. But the only reason I'm bringing it up is because I
I mean,
just noticed because
well,
I just noticed that
Adrian might
stark
be.
change and like, oh,
Mm,
every single one of these people seems to be using an iPhone now. What is that about? So yeah, that's why.
yeah. But anyway, back to our point.
Yeah,
The letter and
I
Ken's
just think he
decision
remembers that,
to
and he comes to
kill.
Hugo and he kind of explains himself. He's like, "This is what Dad would do. This is probably what Dad would want." And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of people about how things would be going forward, and um, one good friend of mine, Jao Chima, he writes for Seda. He actually told me that it would be cool to see what happens what happens now that they're out of their dad's shadow. And I was like, are they? Are they actually out of, they're not. He was like, oh, and he was like,
Can
oh,
you
you
get
think
out of
even
that
in
shadow?
death?
No.
Like, and I was like, yes, even in death. 100% even in death.
100%. I think death might even almost be
Yeah.
worse because you can't confront
Like
it. It's just a
Kendall
shadow.
has
There's
the
no
freedom,
physical
more
embodiment.
freedom than ever to actually choose to be free. And he is not just actively getting back into this mess, he's trying to play it the way his dad would. And it's like Logan isn't around to even, like, you're saying, oh, you want dad's approval. Like, you always used to do these things in the hopes of, like, okay, maybe he'll say, yeah, you did good. But now that's not even a possibility anymore, but you're still doing it. So I don't know why yeah, it is scary.
Which makes it scarier. Back to your friend's reversing, replying to your friend's point, because when he was alive, there was a
Yeah,
possibility that you could get that acknowledgement. Now you can't. So you just keep on doing more and more and more, but the finish line
exactly.
keeps
And
on
you
moving
become your
further and
father.
further and further. I think Kendall does it because, and this is just me, this is definitely me impressing my opinions on him. I think he does it because he realizes that there's a cross
He
out
wants to prove
with an
himself.
underline. So he wants to prove
Yeah,
to his dad that he's a killer one last time. I think he
I
realizes that
agree.
that's his dad crossing that
Yeah,
name out.
that's what I
And
was
he's like,
feeling
oh,
as well.
okay.
I
Yeah.
think Kendall thinks it's
That was
crossed.
because before that scene, I didn't have an opinion. I didn't have an opinion on what
Yeah,
it was, but
definitely,
after that scene, I was
because
like, oh, that's a cross out. That's not underlined,
yeah,
and it's also the
it
clearest
was
look we have
to
of it.
me like it was a cross out.
Plot output.
And I feel like Kendall.
Yeah.
I also agree that Kendall felt that way, and I think he realized it from the beginning. If you look at the way he was interacting with people in that scene, when
Mm.
he's like, it definitely isn't Shiv, for example, when he looked her in the face and said that, yeah, like he
Sure
really
as
said
shit
that,
isn't
and he
Shiv.
was like,
Jesus
well,
Christ.
even if it's not me, it's definitely not you too. And I think that's just him kind of quietly
Yeah.
reacting to that, but not saying what was going on. And that's such good writing, bro, because because he's not verbally reacting to what's just happened. He's processing it, and this is how he's reacting as he's processing it. But nobody necessarily would know why he's saying that. But people around him might be like, "Oh, maybe he feels like his name was crossed out." It's just such a sensitive thing that's been done here, and I
Mm-hmm.
like that a
Mm-hmm.
lot. So your idea that he might be doing it, you know, as an extra way of, because I know I said like he he feels that he can hear Logan's voice in his head, meaning like you're not a killer. You saying that there's an extra push of I want to now
Mm-hmm.
show that I'm a killer, is an interesting touch. Maybe that's what he does,
Mm-hmm.
because what he does right after, very killer moves. I'm just gonna say that right now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Hugo, you're in a bad spot. First
Mm-hmm.
of all, I love how they keep bringing
Well,
Fisher
I mean,
Stevens to this show to
um,
make me laugh.
this is this is the most I have felt like this was Fisher Stevens playing this character. That makes sense. Like this was like because this was very sketchy. And like I expect Fisher Stevens to play a sketchy character. I was like obviously I've loved Hugo throughout. I love him laughing at the tape. But I'm like, oh, this like him getting embroiled in this kind of like uh, insider trading thing makes sense for a Fisher Stevens character. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah,
Oh my
that
god.
tracks, fair enough. Yeah, I think we can wrap it up there. But I have some quick random points. One was about her falling down, Shiv falling
Mhm.
down, but we've already touched on that regarding the pregnancy. Um, because I had in my notes that it felt weirdly important for them to leave it in the episode because they could have done without it. But obviously, with her being pregnant, it makes more sense. Um,
Yeah,
of
and
course,
this is not
Kendall's
the
middle
first
name
time
is
that it's been
Logan,
mentioned.
but also,
Yeah, I knew it beforehand. I'm not
oh,
sure
is
which
it? Oh, okay,
episode
maybe I
I
missed
learned
it
it
first
in, but
time.
his name is Kendall Logan Roy, and it was just funny to see that on paper.
But also, yeah, did Logan hate
That's what I
Connor
was
before he was
saying,
born?
bro,
Why would you
because
not give Connor
it's like
Logan?
that's why I think Kendall's name is even on the paper in the first place, right? Because because you have Connor, and I think Connor is so heavily associated with his mother in Logan's mind that, and I really hope we find out more
Mm-hmm,
about what
mm-hmm.
happened with her. I think when he remarried and Caroline comes into the picture, and then Kendall's born, he's like, okay, this is my golden child. Like this is the one that I will put most of my eggs in.
Mm.
Yeah, like I'm going
So
I'm
he
going
was
to,
like,
yeah, it's like
I'm not gonna
groom
risk Connor being
this
mentally
one
ill.
to be the next me. And
Mm. Mm-hmm.
he that's where Kendall starts to feel pressure all his life. He gives him his name. He prefer like it's kind of like how
Yeah.
in like I don't know, you don't really watch Power, or the Power universe as they're calling themselves these days, but in book 2, Ghost, which follows the activities of the first show's main character, James St. Patrick. His son's name Tariq, like Tariq's name is Tariq James St. Patrick. So he is his, yes, yeah,
Is
he
it?
is his
I
father in a
didn't know he
lot of
had
ways, and I
Jason's
think the
name.
show
Oh.
is trying to, it's a very similar thing here. People do that, especially when you do it with one child. That's kind of like a very big indicator of what your expectations are, and I think it informs a lot of the stuff that we've seen in the relationship.
Yeah. 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 Let's. I think Cox mentioned that
Yes,
he
he did say
believes
that.
Connor is on
He
the
did. He
spectrum.
did say that. I think that's an interesting
So
analysis. But yeah,
yeah. Anyway, that's it. I think yeah. That's a good point to wrap it up. Actually, quickly, quick story. So I think he said it on when it was on Colbert. We were talking about how because they
yeah, I
have
was
the
going to
funeral
mention that
episode, which
next
again
week.
I guess is the next week's episode. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no,
Oh, I mean, yeah. I guess we can say it now. Just
we might as well,
or do you
because
want to keep
it
this in
just
next
makes
week?
sense that he would do that, right? He essentially helped to keep the secret.
Yeah. So the story is that they had planned to do a fake scene with Logan during the funeral, so that obviously threw away the scent of the reporters about Logan dying. But then they call him when he's on the way. They're like, "Look, we're running out of time. We don't think we have time to shoot the scene." And then he's like, "Fuck that! I have to come, otherwise people will know." So he then goes to the funeral set dressed in black and all that. And then what do you know? The next day on the Daily Mail, they say Succession is shooting a funeral scene. Brian Cox, Nicholas Braun, and
Yeah.
Kendall, I think, Jeremy Strong were present.
Yeah.
So who died? Is it Tom or Shiv?
Then we're
Meaning
able
just
to
because
know
he
who
actually came to
actually.
set and
Yeah.
everything through.
Yeah.
Imagine if he didn't come to set, we
He
would have known
really,
he
he
was like
really,
we would have
really did a
known
good job
all
going
this
there.
while, and that would have just really. He saved
The
Peak
final
TV.
gifts he gave them.
He saved one of the best shows of all time. That was like, yeah. Anyway, that's why his name was in this
Told you.
episode's credits. So you can keep on getting paid. I mean, you're right. He probably. Oh, okay. Quickly. I don't know if it's a spoiler or not.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say it to you, and then you can tell me whether it's cut out or not.
You should cut it, but
I'll
save
cut it
it.
out.
Save it so that like
That's
if
perfect.
it happens, he's be like,
That's
okay, yeah,
perfect.
we actually
We'll
discussed
keep
this.
it. Okay.
What
Yeah.
is today's date?
Let me make sure I put it so I remove from the YouTube as well.
Today is April 14th, 2023. Theory Files number 1.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Everybody, thank you very much for discussing this episode with me.
Yep.
This is just a great show. This is a really great show. Like the way this episode this is all in one location. It's just a really good show, man. Just really good show.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much. We'll be back next week. I think by next week we'll be joined back with Jibs. That was not English. We'll be joined again by Jibs to discuss
hopefully
5.
Jibs and not Matson. Matson is so stressful to do business with. I actually don't know how anybody.
If you could get one person to have a meeting with, Matson or Jared Mencken.
Oh, okay. I think that's crazy. I'd probably go with Matson.
It has to be Matson. I don't know why you're thinking so long. It has to be Matson.
Go with Matson. Because I mean, it's just a meeting to do a deal with. Like both of them feel like you're doing it
for a deal. It's not just you're not just talking to him for like it's a meeting.
Well, still, both of them feel like you're doing a deal with the devil, but still Matson, man. Because
at least one you get paid.
Yeah,
like, you get to get fucked.
Matson is so hard to do business with. Like every time. Like I really felt that in this episode because it's just every small thing is just like wow, like nobody knows what this guy is going to do or how he'll react. Like he's really giving like like Western European tech billionaire. I mean, Skarsgård is doing a great job.
It's a great job. Okay, yeah, thank you very much for coming on. And yes, guys, please, if you listen this far, please rate and review the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, please. That really helps us. And yeah, check in on the other stuff we're covering. And yeah, join us next week when we'll be joined by the one, the only Daniel Kaluuya. I think it's Daniel Kaluuya next week, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's Daniel. I'll try to confirm with the schedule. But we'll join by Daniel Kaluuya.
His people reached out.
Yeah. They've been begging. Bye, guys. Hey. Yeah, I knew my